Not many people realize it, but today, many wildlife species are more abundant than at any time during the past 100 years. The turning point for many wildlife species was 1937, when the Federal Aid in Wildlife Restoration Act was passed. Known as Pittman-Robertson for the two legislators who sponsored it, this law directs that a tax be collected on all sporting arms, ammunition, and archery equipment. The money is made available to the states and territories, who each year carry out several hundred wildlife conservation projects. One of these projects involves black bear research in Maine. Each spring, Maine's black bear trapping program swings into high gear. From May through July, wildlife biologists daily check 50 miles of trap line. Bears have a very convenient trait. They tend to walk in their old footprints. A few meat scraps will bring them to the snare. Tranquilizing drugs, first used in the 1960s, allow vital measurements to be made on wild animals with minimum risk to the researcher or to the animal. Since 1975, this bear study has trapped, measured, and released over 700 bears. It was not long ago that folks in Maine scoffed at spending time and money learning about bears. In fact, between 1946 and 1957, over 10,000 bears were killed to collect a bounty. But things have changed. Black bears are now a managed species. Radio transmitting collars are an important tool for wildlife biologists. They permit remote tracking of an animal's movement, location, activity, and even its respiration rate. In the winter, biologists follow the radio signals to locate and examine hibernating female bears and their cubs. Black bears often make their dens beneath fallen trees. Here, the cubs are born. Hibernation doesn't mean that the bear is fast asleep. They've been known to roar out at the crack of a twig. It takes a special confidence and no small amount of courage to crawl into a bear den. After the sow has been tranquilized, her cubs see daylight for the first time. The newborns must be kept warm. The 200-pound sow is also brought out to have her file updated. Decisions about logging, land development, hunting seasons, and access to wilderness areas are increasingly being made from a scientific understanding of wildlife. This understanding emerges slowly over time and is based on facts acquired through countless measurements and observations. When all the measurements and samples are taken, the mother is placed back in the same position as she was found. The cubs are sprayed with a cedar scent to mask human odor and placed on the mother. The cubs will stay with their mother through a second winter. They will be visited again next year to have their records updated. All this effort is for an animal that not long ago was all but willed to extinction in many states. Since 1937, Pittman-Robertson has generated more than $2 billion for wildlife research and restoration, land acquisition, habitat improvement, and hunter education. The most encouraging and enduring contribution of Pittman-Robertson may be that the science and practice of wildlife management is now well established in America. It took a long time coming. Early American settlers found an abundance of wildlife and eagerly sought them for food. But the days of abundance soon passed. It wasn't merely unrestricted hunting that caused wildlife to become scarce, but also what was happening to the land. Down came the forests. Valleys were cleared and fenced, mountains stripped of trees, and river bottoms plowed and planted. The loss of woodland was devastating to some species, especially the wild turkey and deer. Hunting without regard to season or sex took a heavy toll. By the late 1800s, conservationists, many of them hunters, became alarmed at the rapid disappearance of wildlife. They pressured states to regulate hunting and even to ban it completely on some species. But merely restricting hunting did not bring the hoped-for recovery. In the 1920s, the wild turkey was found only as small flocks in isolated areas. Today, there are over 3 million wild turkeys. 3 factors made this amazingly successful restoration possible. First, the regrowth of the forests, especially on farms that were abandoned from the mid-1920s on. Wild turkeys thrive in hardwood forests that have patches of open areas and lots of oak trees. The second factor was the concern and cooperation of people. For example, in Missouri, turkeys were released on farms where landowners agreed to protect them and to maintain wild turkey habitat. The third factor was the ability to safely trap and relocate large numbers of wild turkeys. A site is baited with corn. The cannon net trap is ready. The men wait. In Missouri, wild turkey restoration is complete. In 1960, less than 100 birds could be safely taken during the hunting season. By 1987, nearly 57,000 were taken during the fall and spring seasons, and the population continues to expand. Missouri now trades wild turkeys with other states. These birds will be released in Kentucky. In exchange, 20 river otters are received. River otter were once abundant in Missouri, but unregulated fur trapping wiped them out. Today, otters are again found in Missouri's rivers and streams. This is the result of too many deer and too little food. The sheared line is the limit to which deer can stretch for food. There is a popular belief that wildlife should be left completely alone. That was tried, but with the tragic results of malnutrition and death from starvation. Because few of their natural predators remain, the number of deer will increase far beyond the amount of food available to them. Sport hunting, where a man assumes the role of predator, is an effective deer management tool. By controlling the number, sex, and age of deer, the herd will remain healthy. In Georgia, as in other states, the health of white-tailed deer is systematically monitored. At check stations, the animal's age, weight, sex, and body condition are recorded. This information is entered into a central computer and will be used to establish a profile of Georgia's white-tailed deer. This profile will be used to set hunting seasons and bag limits so that Georgia's deer populations remain healthy. The restoration of the white-tailed deer in America is an unparalleled wildlife management success story. From a low of 300,000 in 1900, there are now more than 15 million whitetails. A critical element for many species is wetlands. Unfortunately, wetlands are shrinking faster than they are being restored. The wood duck, one of the most beautiful wetland residents, was once almost exterminated by relentless draining of swamps and ponds, the clearing of timbered bottomlands, and unrestricted hunting. At the urging of conservationists, Congress gave the wood duck complete protection in 1918. The population began a slow recovery that allowed for a limited hunting season on wood duck in 1941. As the wood duck increased, biologists discovered another problem: a lack of tree cavities needed for nesting. During the 1940s, nesting boxes were developed and quickly accepted by the wood duck. Along the Mississippi River in Illinois is the densest collection of nesting boxes in America. Here, a long-term project is studying wood duck nesting and social behavior. Information on the duck's reproductive rate is collected, and their migrations are traced through returned leg bands. Wood duck's eggs hatch after a month of incubation. The ducklings remain in the nest about 24 hours before the hen calls her brood out. The wood duck's success story is the result of several factors: protected status, nesting boxes, wood duck adaptability, and even the restoration of the beaver. The beaver had almost been eliminated by unrestricted fur trapping. But today they have returned to much of their former range. Here they build dams, creating ponds among trees the wood duck uses for nesting and whose water is used for brood rearing. Native to North America, the graceful and swift pronghorn antelope once roamed across the vast central plains. Their number exceeded 30 million, but the loss of range and unrestrained hunting almost wiped them out. By the 1920s, there were only 13,000 pronghorn. During the 30s and 40s, the pronghorn populations were thoroughly surveyed, and research on their foods and habitat was conducted. Pittman-Robertson funds were used to trap and relocate the antelope to their former range. Today, there are more than 1 million pronghorn antelope, and the population continues to grow. Thousands of square miles of federal and state lands are actively managed for wildlife. There is even more privately owned land that is potentially useful to wildlife. In Texas, the state advises landowners on how to improve their land for wildlife. As a result of this cooperation, pronghorn antelope now graze side by side with cattle, just as they once did with buffalo. There were once 10 million elk across America, from New England to the Pacific coast. But by 1900, habitat loss and exploitation brought the number down to 50,000. The elk frequently finds itself in conflict with ranchers and foresters. In Oregon, the timber industry has had a heavy impact on wildlife. Logging often means disruption to the elk's habitat through noise, roads, pollution, and stripped hillsides. For foresters, elk are considered a nuisance that eat newly planted tree seedlings. But wildlife biologists may have found a solution. After logging, controlled burning consumes the waste, and the ash helps fertilize the soil. The land is then planted to grasses and clover, as well as tree seedlings. Foresters always feared that grass would choke off the moisture, nutrients, and sunlight from young trees. Oregon's wildlife biologists showed that it wouldn't. Using Pittman-Robertson funds, several clear cuts are seeded each year. The results have been positive. The elk bypass the seedlings for the preferred grass, and the grass holds the topsoil from eroding. Today, there are more than 500,000 elk in the United States, and the population remains healthy and stable. In this rugged, unforgiving landscape lives one of the most highly esteemed wildlife species in North America, the desert bighorn sheep. A century ago, the desert bighorn could be found on mountain ridges and in desert canyons throughout the Southwest. But it too became a victim of indiscriminate killing and loss of habitat. Here in the Kofa Mountains of Arizona, in cooperation with private volunteers, effort is underway to capture sheep from their rocky ledges for release 100 miles further north. State and private organizations are slowly returning the desert bighorn to its historic range. A dart loaded with a muscle relaxant immobilizes the sheep. During transportation, everything is done quickly to minimize the stress on the animal. At the base camp, blood samples are drawn, measurements taken, antibiotic shots given, and radio collars attached. A veterinarian examines each sheep for its health.
17 minutes from chase until response.
After 5 days, 40 healthy ewes and rams have been captured. Reproduction will quickly replace the animals removed. In this range, water is critical for the survival of the relocated bighorn. With Pittman-Robertson funds, thousands of water catchments have been built throughout the Southwest. They benefit not only the bighorn, but mule deer, songbirds, quail, and even insects. This site has been thoroughly surveyed for sufficient food, water, and cover. Records show that the desert bighorn once inhabited these mountains. Now they will live here once again. Alaska. Some call it our last frontier. Sparsely populated, filled with spectacular scenery, and what seems limitless wildlife. Alaska today is a place where nature's riches seem inexhaustible, a place so vast that the thought of man's arrival having an impact on so much nature seems laughable. But in Alaska, if nature's balance is tipped, it can take years to recover. Caribou are a good example. It is near the end of June and the caribou have calved. Warm weather has brought out the mosquitoes which plague the caribou, driving them together to escape their tormentors. Now is the best time for Alaska's fish and game biologists' annual count. This census is critical to caribou management. The caribou's reproductive rate is low, and mortality can be very high. As many as 90% of the calves have been lost in one season, usually to predators or extremely cold weather. This fall's hunting season and bag limits will be based on data from the survey. New technologies such as satellites and computers are also aiding caribou researchers. Radio collars transmit data on animal location and activity to orbiting satellites. This information can be retrieved and displayed on a computer screen. Here are the routes taken by 2 caribou during 2 weeks in May. Gathering this same information by field observation would be impossible. Another aspect of wildlife conservation under the Pittman-Robertson program are hunter safety education courses. 700,000 students are trained each year in safe handling of firearms, respect for wildlife, respect for public and private property, and responsible behavior while hunting. Most classes are taught by volunteers. Nationwide, more than 45,000 men and women contribute their time and energy to teaching hunter education.
Remember, while we're on the firing line,
since it has been shown that safety programs reduce hunting-related injuries, most states require training before a hunting license is issued.
Show me the proper stance for holding a shotgun. Okay, let's put your right foot out just a little bit more and flex your right knee and lean into it a little bit. That's very good. Okay, let's try a live one. Okay, bring the gun up and get in the proper stance. When you're ready, call for the bird.
Cool.
Excellent.
Finally, after all the hours of instruction and anticipation, there is that first, never-to-be-forgotten hunt.
Wow, what a beauty. Look at that. Damn. Let's see the beard on that fella. Wow, look at that.
Hunting is enjoyed by more than 18 million Americans. Through license fees and the Pittman-Robertson excise tax, more than anyone, the sportsman has helped in wildlife restoration.
Who would like dark meat and who would like the light meat, Preston?
Every year, generous harvests are taken from America's game populations. Yet, these hunted species are among the most stable and secure. Respect for our land community is increasing, and with it have come profound changes in the status of America's wildlife. Many species have been restored to much of their former range and have dramatically increased their populations. Wildlife management, now an established science, is taught in many universities and colleges. Through continuing research, we are understanding more about wildlife needs and how to meet them. Every state and territory has an agency responsible for the welfare of wildlife, staffed with trained and dedicated professionals. Pittman-Robertson has enabled the states to buy more than 4 million acres of land and to manage another 40 million acres as wildlife habitat. Most people who use these lands are not hunters, but hikers, bird watchers, and others who enjoy seeing wildlife in its natural environment. Many species are in better condition now than at any time during the past 100 years. A direct result of public and private interests working toward a common goal, the restoration of wildlife. We have come far since 1937, and there is still much to be done. But we can pause for a moment and celebrate America's wildlife.
I like to know that big black bears still roam the forest floor. I like to know wild turkeys strut and gobble as before, that racing graceful antelope still run the grassy range, and dancing prairie chicken boom and stamp across the plain. I'd like to visit meadows with herds of bugling elk. I'd like to stand with bighorn sheep upon their rocky shelf, to see the wood duck settle down, see beaver and much more. I'm so proud of what we've done, America's wildlife to restore.
Thank you.